Hang on 1 second, I'm sorry. All right.
I'll address the disadvantages of this issue. This proposal does not need to be taken to a national level. If it were to be passed, the consequences of this particular proposal will be worse than the problem that the proposal was intended to remedy. The proposal will not bring the advantages the advocate claims, and the proposal may even cause greater disadvantages or evil. I think that it may be fair to argue that passing this law would mean violating our human rights found in the First Amendment, but there really is no need for such a law to be enacted, and I'll explain why. Gregory Laughlin, a reporter who was investigating the controversy of video games, makes this statement as follows. It seems to me that if the government has a choice to either pass a possibly unconstitutional law or not pass it, and passing it won't have any tangible benefits, it ought not to pass the law. As for why it's not needed, well, there are a lot of R-rated movies out there that are as violent as some M-rated video games. But we don't really see people clamoring to have laws passed making it a crime to let a minor into an R-rated movie. It is actually already considerably more difficult for minors to buy an M-rated video game than for them to get into an R-rated movie. The gaming industry is doing a fairly good job of regulating itself through the ESRB. Government intervention is unnecessary. I agree with Laughlin and believe that the government does not need to be intrusive or any more controlling of this matter. Not to mention what that kind of oppression can do to these minors. If the law was passed, minors may try and find ways to get around the system. The more limits that may be put on them, the more rebellious they may become, resulting to wanting what they can't have. For example, just a little illustration to kind of help you visualize what I'm trying to tell you. In the story of Adam and Eve, in the Bible, Eve is told by God not to eat from one particular tree, the fruit of one particular tree, okay? So now if God had not told Eve she could not have it, would that apple have really looked quite so delicious to her? Same thing goes for minors. The government will tell them that they can't buy these video games due to age restrictions, which will appeal to their rebellious nature, making them more inclined to perform a felony by obtaining these games in their own ways. Also, if the law is passed, it will merely restrict vendors from vending the games directly to minors. Okay? I repeat, directly to minors. Meaning minors will find a way around the system in order to obtain the game that they want. Now, you may be wondering in what ways these kids could obtain the mature-rated video games that they want without getting caught. Well, let me give you a few examples as to what they could end up doing. Kids will ask their parents to buy mature-rated games for them. That's actually one that I used to use on my parents when I was underage and I was looking for a mature-rated video game that I wanted. I also took advantage of the fact that they didn't know much about the ESRB rating system. Dr. Richard Brown from St. Olaf College in Minnesota states the following about parents. Parents must take responsibility for the choice of games their children play. The ESRB rates certain games as mature and adult only for good reasons. Thus, it would be the obligation of the parent to control what a child is exposed to in the home. Government regulation is not necessary. If parents regulate what their child play at home, I see this as a means of just empowering parents by giving them the decision to restrict the operation of the marketplace that usually targets the children. Basically, kids can still play whatever they like, but they have to go through the parents in order to access these M-rated games. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission, also known as the FTC, conducts a regular review of the ESRB's activities and effectiveness, and it reports its findings to Congress. Among their recent findings, the FTC has found that 83% of game purchases for underage customers are made by parents or by parents and children together. So parents are definitely going to be a way for kids to acquire these games. In turn, the children may end up learning how to scam their parents into buying those video games all the time, possibly causing them to carry a guilty conscience, which I think is safe to say is not exactly the most healthy thing to have. Another loophole that kids can find is through the internet. Even if the law passed, it would nearly be impossible to regulate online sales or downloadable content, since all that is needed to make a purchase is simply just have a credit card or some kind of debit card, not to mention that you can actually buy a Visa gift card now, making the process of buying mature rated video games extremely easy for these minors to execute, especially since no identification is needed in order to make a purchase with a debit or credit card online. As for the downloadable content, that is also usually within its rating. According to the ESRB official website, some games let users play with other people on the internet, but it's also important to realize that some of these games contain live chat features or other user-generated content. This makes it hard to regulate because it's hard to control everything that people do with other players online or say to other players online. All in all, I believe that the pattern of change that the advocates desire will not resolve the disparities given the time and the solution. It's just not capable of solving the problem, and the solution is not workable.